Hey guys, I'm Adam Gonzalez.
And I'm Jesse Espinoza.
And this is Creepy Crawling Cryptids, where we talk to you about all your favorite creepy crawling creatures, from crypts to creeks.
Today we're going to talk about the Western Dragon.
Western Dragon. Uh, this is we totally aren't recording this the same day we recorded Eastern Dragons.
No,
What?
no, we're wearing different clothes.
No,
Can
yeah,
you tell?
I have a different pair of socks on. I promise.
And I'm totally not doing this in my pajamas.
No, yeah, we're wearing suits, and we're both 6'5", shredded and very handsome.
Uh huh. We're just the cutest boys.
We're dragons. We're actually dragons.
Yeah, the reason we don't do a video is because we're too beautiful. The
And-
video wouldn't be able to record.
We're actually dragons, and we don't fit in the camera.
Yeah.
I'm 30 feet long, with a 60-foot wingspan.
Hmm.
I can blow fire.
Yeah, I'm only got a 59-foot wingspan. I'm a little small. But you know what? It's how you use it, not how big. It
Oh
is.
my god. But so Western dragons, a variation of the Eastern dragon, of course. These dragons are your scaly, basic dragons you've seen in just about any dragon movie. If you've watched How to Train Your Dragon, perhaps Shrek, the girl. Oh, you a girl dragon? The girl dragon, Drogon, and Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys Targaryen's dragons. Smog from the Desolation of Smog, the Hobbit trilogy. Yeah, those are the basic dragons we're thinking about here. Um, those scaly winged beasts that blow fire and fly and steal maidens and get slain by knights. Overall, I think these dragons are far more prevalent in Western and overall pop culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's your basic dragon. They vary in colors. Uh, the inspiration for Dungeons and Dragons, if you will.
I guess 50% of the inspiration.
Yeah, Dungeons is the other 50. But yeah, dragons are these extravagant creatures that we truly do are enamored by all the time.
I'm just gonna do a quick little thing about the different kinds of dragons.
Dragons.
So there's your typical dragon with four legs, breathes fire, looks like a giant lizard with a tail.
Two wings.
Yeah. The wyverns, which have two legs, and they have a diamond or arrow shaped tip on the end of its tail. And aquatic wyverns have fish tails. So wyverns are kind of weird because they're usually associated with viciousness, envy, and pestilence, but also they symbolize overthrowing Satan and his demonic forces.
Yeah, it's real. Dragons get real wishy washy as you
Yeah.
look into the history.
Yeah.
Speaking of history, do you want me to jump into that?
Yeah.
All right. So, in terms of history of Western dragons, originally, Western dragons were seen as benevolent and non-violent guardians of treasures. They weren't seen as creatures that sought out destruction or went out and stole maidens and killed livestock and whatnot. They were just these large creatures who guarded things. In fact, the phrase or word dragon comes from the Greek phrase drakonta, meaning to guard treasure. But once Christianity began spreading throughout Europe and most of the world, uh, dragons became this aspect of slaying a dragon became more relevant. You can see this in almost any story if you look back, like uh, coming to slay the dragons. Once again, the dragons in Christianity were tied to a connection with Satan, the devil. They were seen as just monstrous creatures who needed to be taken care of.
Yeah, well, in the Greek literature, St. John's Book of Revelation, Satan is actually described as a great dragon, flaming red, with 7 heads and 10 horns. So that's kind of makes you dragons look bad.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like we said, they were just seen as these creatures guarding treasure, and then suddenly they were seen as these giant serpent monsters who were out to do evil deeds
Yeah, it
and
turns out.
needed to be stopped.
Yeah, it turns out Christians are super into slaying dragons.
Yeah, they're really with it. One such instance of a Christian slaying a dragon would be Saint George. he
Oh yeah, I like the story.
yeah, saints slay dragons. That was their thing. Like Christians wanted Christianity to seem really cool, and so they're like, yeah, saints slay dragons all the time.
Yeah, they totally just like
Yeah,
slay dragons.
yeah,
They're super cool
Satan.
and jacked.
Yeah, Satan dragons. Yeah, underneath their priestly robe, they're just huge, just hulking monsters. But yeah, so Saint George came across this town, and they're like, oh man, like there's this dragon. He stole a fair maiden. We're in some deep duty here. We're not doing great. And Saint George is like, oh well, I'll handle this. This is for me. So he walks up on this dragon. He saves the maiden, defends himself with the sign of the cross, fending off and slaying this mighty Satanist beast. After which, the town is so enamored with the actions of the saint and how amazing he is, they immediately, all of them, convert to Christianity.
Yeah, I would too. If some dude rolled in, killed a dragon, I'd be like, hey, maybe I should check out this Jesus dude.
Not only that, he flexed on a cross. Like, he pulled up a cross, and the dragon was like, oh, I'm gonna step back.
Yeah, I actually read too for that part. What at the ending, he wounds the dragon with his spear, and then he gets the woman's garter and like throws it, and it wraps around the dragon's neck, and it makes it docile. So he walks it back to the town, and the people are like, "What the fuck are you doing? This is a dragon. It's been murdering us." And he's just like, no, watch this. This is with Jesus on my side, I could do this, and he kills it. And they're like, oh.
So he's really just out here just thugging with Jesus. Like, nah,
Yeah.
bro. Like, you need to check out this Jesus shit real quick.
Yeah, like if I saw that, I'd be like, Jesus is my new bro.
A Bible, yes, please.
Yeah, give me 3. I'll buy 3.
Yeah. I mean, if I can throw it and tame a dragon, I'm game.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I would become Jesus's numero uno.
Go to church every day, not just Sundays.
I'll be a good Christian for once. All right, let's talk about the Lorenian Hydra, or the Hydra of Lorena. So you probably know this Hydra from the one that Hercules kills, that when he cuts off his head, 2 more grow.
Hercules.
Yeah, it turns out Hercules kills a couple dragons.
Actually, sorry. Did you know Hercules is the Roman pronunciation and is in fact the Roman demigod?
Oh, really?
The Greek demigod that did all the acts of Hercules and everything is Heracles.
Heracles.
Yeah, it's spelled Heracles.
Yeah, I remember it was something slightly different.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing.
But like, we're all down with the Romans. They say things easier.
Yeah, I like I prefer Heracles.
Yeah, I think it has a certain ring to it. But I watched the cartoon.
Who
so,
didn't?
Yeah. Actually,
Disney's...
one of my cousins is very religious, and so apparently my mom told me about how I guess one time we were talking about something, and so he brought up that like, oh, there's only one God, and I'm like, what? But like, what about Zeus though? And I guess we had an argument because I was like, no, there's like a bunch of gods.
Yeah,
like,
look
what are you
at the
talking
Greeks.
about?
Yeah, like her Disney's inaccuracies are a crime, and they get away with it because they pander to children and families.
Yeah, so one major detail that has changed with the cartoon is that this Hydra was actually raised by Hera to kill Hercules. Because
she was so spiteful.
Yeah, in the myth, she didn't like Hercules because it wasn't her son.
It made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know the whole myth, Zeus was a total man whore, and it was disgusting.
Yeah.
And he would just kind of sex anything he came across.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had Hercules with a mortal woman, and Hera, Zeus's wife, didn't care for that shit at all.
Is Hercules the one that he impregnates her by becoming Sparkles?
Oh, is it?
I can't remember.
It might be. Yeah, but I know Hercules is one of his strongest sons.
Yeah. He's one of his favorites, definitely.
Yeah, and so Hera then puts him through trials, and she says if he passes these trials, she'll accept him as as a demigod and as a proper hero, which he does because he's a thug.
Yeah, well, actually, this one he technically loses. I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this creature had its lair in the Lake of Lerna in Argoleid. I don't know, but
Argoloid?
Argoloid, yeah. So this is thought to be the entrance of the underworld. So the traits of the Hydra is that it has poisonous breath and blood that just the smell was deadly. So, and then of course, when you cut off its head, two more would grow back. So when Hercules was going around cutting off their heads, he's like, "Oh, I might be in trouble. This is bad." And so he calls out to his cousin and is like, "Hey, can you help me out?" And so his cousin like gets like a burning twigs or something. I don't remember, like branch. And
I think it was like a
cauterize it.
thistle, like a bush.
Yeah, something
thistle
like
bush or
that.
something like that.
And so yeah, so when he went back, the king that gave him these trials were like, "Oh well, since you didn't do it by yourself, you technically didn't do it." so yeah, and so that was a bit of a bummer, but the deck was stacked against him from the beginning. And the other creature he kills was Ladon, a serpent-like dragon that twisted itself around the tree in the Garden of Hesperides, and guarded the golden apple. He got killed, and then the next day, I guess, so Hercules kills him. The next day, Jason and the Argonauts like show up, and they just see his twitching body. It's just like a weird little like like they tried to make the worlds connect or something,
Right.
like the MCU or something. But yeah, it's just a weird little detail.
Yeah. Hercules is actually like kind of a really interesting story.
Yeah.
Because the way Hercules, the way he dies at the end is such a bummer.
How does he die?
Yeah, no. So he's this amazing hero. He finally passes everything, and he's like the illest. Like everyone loves Hercules. He has a wife and kids, and I forget why, but his wife is like convinced he's cheating, so she poisons a dagger and stabs him because he was vulnerable to her because he trusted her, and so she's yeet, and he was like, "I wasn't cheating on you," and she's like, "Oh, my bad," and he was like, "Well, it's too late now," and so he dies. I think there's another rendition where like he accidentally cuts himself with a poison dagger, but either way, he gets poisoned and dies. And then, but he's welcomed into the pantheon of the gods, and he's given one of the golden apples. Speaking of Hydra and dragons at serpents around trees, we could definitely mention from Norse mythology, Jormungandr, the world snake.
Yeah, the world snake.
Yeah. So if you've probably seen Ragnarok, if you live in 2019,
you should see it if you
Thor
haven't seen it.
Definitely one of the better MCU movies, but. They discuss Ragnarok, which is the ending of times in Norse mythology and the resetting of time. So it's like it literally just resets everything that occurred and then all occurs again. And so Ragnarok comes about when some stuff goes down, but pretty much each of the main gods has this beast to fight. So Fenris, the gigantic wolf, that I believe Odin fights, and Thor fights Jormungandr, the world snake, which was originally a very small, like, pinky-sized snake that was thrown into the waters and just kept feeding until it became a gigantic monstrous serpent that could wrap around the world and grab its own tail.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's really neat. Once again, like, it's just a constant, like, kind of show that these types of creatures exist in all types of mythology. Just like the snake who got them to eat the apple in Adam and Eve. Like, there's so many creatures that just come across in most belief systems.
Yeah. One little, like, side story about Hercules that I think is, like, very showing of his character. He ends up coming across a golden apple because he's walking through, like, this canyon or something, and so it's really narrow. And so I think Eris has the golden apple, but at this point it becomes a sour apple. And so she drops it in his way, and so it's just a little apple.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "I bet you can't get around this." And he's like, "It's Hercules." So he's like, "Well, I'm just going to smash it." So he hits it, and it gets bigger, and he keeps hitting it, and it gets bigger and bigger until it blocks his way. It's just like, he just did nothing. So it's just very telling of his character.
I mean, he was a very punch him up.
Yeah.
He was real punch him up.
Yeah, he He was a simple man with simple solutions.
Yes, like, well, like the Hydra, because the Hydra is not a simple stab it and kill it creature.
Yeah.
It's head off, two more heads. And he was like, oh, that didn't work. Well, I'm gonna cut another head off just to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't work. Well, I'm gonna cut another head off just to make sure.
When he had like cleaned the stables, he just had redirected water to clean it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
he
very
was
practical.
lazy. But as Stephen Hawking, was it Bill Gates or Stephen Hawking? One of them, no, Bill Gates. He said, if I have the choice between a lazy person and a hardworking person, I'll pick the lazy person because they'll find an easier way to do something.
Oh yeah, that's.
And I totally get it because I am the laziest person in the world.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I'll big nap all day. If I had the option, I wouldn't be here right now. Jesse keeps me chained up. he only feeds me on podcast days, so I sound strong for the podcast.
Yeah, and let
Just
him go
agrees with it?
outside, get some vitamin C from the sun, and then we
Cold
get
sun.
back in here and record.
Yeah, it's a rough life.
It's a hard knock life.
We should probably move on.
So there's like one of the older Western dragons was known as the Babylon dragon Masushu, which had a serpent's head and body, legs of a lion, and tail of a scorpion. That's actually a pretty metal monster right there.
Wait, you say lion, wings, scorpion?
Serpent head and body, legs of a lion, and tail of a scorpion.
Isn't that more like a chimera?
Yeah, that sounds really chimera. But I think, don't they have tails of a snake?
I thought, no, don't manticore? Or is that a manticore?
Oh, I don't know. We should have looked.
We
this
should really
up.
brush up on our...
Yeah, but I'm not. So,
Not at all.
And then in the Middle East, there's the Persian Book of Kings, and so Rustim kills an invisible dragon. And the way he does this is he just pretty much got lucky. So there's an invisible dragon, and he's just like, well, I'm just gonna square up with it, right? Doesn't have a plan. So he runs in, immediately gets like pounced.
Well, yeah.
So it's on top of him, and his horse just like panics and like bites the dragon and rips off a good piece of meat.
Oh my god.
And yeah, and then that's how he was able to win, because his horse just happened to come in and like back him up.
Oh my god, my friend! Just like takes a bite and he's like, thank you.
He's like,
Valiant
oh, I gotta
steed.
fight a creature I can't see that's stronger than me. Let me just go for it.
I'm sorry, have you read any hero story? That's always what they do!
Yeah.
So, this made me think of Perseus, and when he goes to get Medusa, one, he goes in so ill-prepared. He's like, I got this. I'm pretty sure I know how bad it's gonna be. And then his whole squad gets turned to stone. He's like, I didn't know how bad it was gonna be.
I was not prepared
Yeah,
for this.
but then he hits her with that reflection. But secondarily, or I think he looks at her reflection, but it bugs me, because poor Medusa, right?
Oh yeah, Medusa's story sucks.
she gets raped by one of the gods, and the god's wife is so upset, and who turns her into Medusa? Which god? Goddess.
I
Probably
think-
Hera.
I think it was Athena, but I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah. Regardless, she gets raped, and because of that, because the goddess is jealous, she turns her into this hideous creature.
Yeah.
Because she's upset at her. But some renditions believe that it was more she turned her into the hideous creature to protect her. Because she was one of the most beautiful women in the world, and now men can no longer attack her. It's
I
this
would
rough
rather not be a
translation thing.
monster.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, though, but so she gets raped, turns into a creature, has to hide from everybody, has these people always trying to come kill her, and then gets her head cut off by Perseus.
Yeah.
Zeus's son, who I think Zeus is the one that raped her. It's a real sad story.
Yeah, it's
Greek mythology's a bummer.
yeah, it doesn't work great for anyone. Other
Yeah.
than Zeus, things work out for Zeus.
Because he's the worst. That's why I'm glad. That's why I'm glad Christianity came around and just eradicated Greek mythology. Because Zeus needed to be ended.
Oh man, yeah, and Christians definitely tried their best to get rid of Greek mythology.
Oh, they did an amazing job.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't exist anymore.
yeah, essentially the only reason that we know about Greek mythology is because the Muslims like collected it.
Yeah, it's called mythology now,
Yeah.
not religion.
Yeah, but yeah, the Dark Ages was
Imagine if you
Fantastic.
used the words Christian mythology, you'd probably get beat.
yeah.
Just jumped. Anyways, back to these dragons. Dragons.
Dragons. All right, and so the Welsh, they use their like symbol thing is a red dragon, and it's based off this little story where there was this like red dragon just chilling in Wales, right?
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden this white dragon just like shows up, and so they just start fighting, and the sound is so loud that the world just starts falling into chaos because
Oh,
everything's awful. So
right.
like crops are dying, women are miscarrying.
The works.
Yeah, like everything bad that could happen. No babies and no food.
Oh man.
And so I love this is how the people deal with these two dragons fighting, right? Because I guess they're equally matched. Like no side is winning.
Right.
So what they do is they make a pit and they fill it with mead, and so the dragons are just like, let's take five, drink some of this, and so they drink it, and then they both fall asleep, and so they just like build a jail around them.
He's in prison, Bolt Dragon.
Yeah.
That's golden. Yeah, that's a good resolution. Because they didn't kill him, they didn't slay him. We got him.
Yeah, they got the cockatrice.
Oh,
It's a serpent born from an egg laid by a rooster. It's a serpent with two legs and the head of a rooster. It is venomous to the point that its breath and gaze are lethal. Except, so if you get attacked by one of these things, what you want to do is you want to get yourself a weasel. Because they are immune to their poison. And they could die, and so yeah, the only way to like kill these monsters is either by a weasel, or if they hear a rooster crow, or if you get them to look themselves in the mirror because they have that poisonous gaze.
yeah.
And so the sort of big brother of the cockatrice is a basilisk. So they're known as the Serpent King just because they're so powerfully venom.
Yeah, you ever seen Harry Potter?
Yeah. So they have a serpent head of a dragon at the end of at the end of its tail. Wait, they're serpent with the head of a dragon at the end of its tail. They're born when a toad hatches an egg that has been laid by a midden by a 9-year-old cockatrice.
I love the like certain things, like the very specifications.
Yeah, it's so specific. So it's so venomous that it just leaves its venom wherever it is. It's kind of like a slug. It leaves like a venom trail. And I guess they like dig holes and stuff, and so you can tell where one is because like all the plants around it are dead.
Good lord.
And its gaze is so deadly that it just corrupts the world around it. So, but they can be killed by the odor of a weasel. So if they just smell a weasel, they die.
That's a really glaring weakness.
Yeah, it's weirdly specific.
Just like throw a bag of weasels at him.
Yeah, that's all you can really do.
Yeah, and then just like and dies. But yeah, we can discuss dragons pop culture really quick because I think that there's so many.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, How to Train Your Dragon, Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons, and all that. Everybody's favorite Mother of Dragons, Daenerys, played by the wonderful Emilia Clarke.
Yeah.
She's just great.
Yeah, those eyebrows though.
But yeah, her fierce dragons, which would qualify more as wyverns, actually.
I think they only have 2 legs. So
Yeah, they
I
do.
think they're technically wyverns.
Yeah, so they qualify technically as wyverns.
I feel bad.
Anyways, there's also, of course, the beautiful Night Fury, adorable Toothless in How to Train Your Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That movie's iconic. That first one,
Yeah.
I love those movies. Honestly,
I've only seen the first one.
the other ones are okay. The second one made me cry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not really cry, but it made me quite sad. They had some
Yeah.
sad parts in it. But yeah, Toothless is the illest and the realest. I haven't seen the new one yet. What other dragons are there? Dragonheart. I know I mentioned that in our last dragon episode, but I need to mention it again because it's so good.
There's the scaleless dragon in Dark Souls that teach the humans how to use lightning to kill the dragons. Because he didn't have scales, and so I guess he was bullied by the other
Oh,
dragons.
he's real bitter.
Yeah, so he comes down because I guess the lore is that like dragons were just eating people. There's like a bunch of them, and they just couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so Scaleless here was all bitter, and so he came down to the humans like, hey, you know that you could kill dragons with lightning magic, and I could teach you how to do it. And they're like, oh, okay. So they learn this lightning magic, and they just almost eradicate dragons.
And he's like, "That's what you get."
Mhm.
There's what is it? Pete? Yeah, Pete and the Magic Dragon.
Pete and the Magic Dragon.
Yeah, it's Disney. It's wonderful.
Wow.
It's so Disney had this really old parade, the Electric Parade, and I loved it as a little kid. And I had this little Pete plush because I love dragons, and he's this little green plump dragon. I'm gonna pull him up so you can see him because he's adorable. But yeah, so he's a Disney-fied dragon, and on the Electric Parade, he had his own float. He was this giant, shining dragon. And so Pete's riding him, and he's one of the cast members, and he's like, "Oh!" And so I have my little Pete, and I was this little kid, and he looks down and he sees me, and he makes eye contact with me, and he sees my Pete the Magic Dragon, and he's like, "Oh, that's nice," and like gives me a thumbs up, and I was like, "Oh my god, like that was an iconic moment for me. That was a defining moment for me as a child.
It molded you as an adult. Oh my god, what the fuck is that?
It's Pete and his
That
dragon.
is the ugliest dragon. I've
Yeah,
ever seen in
he's
my
not the
life.
cutest. But then they did a live action one, and that was a bummer.
Oh yeah. Oof.
Yeah, I watched some of it, and it made me very sad all the time. But yeah, and so they got rid of the Electric Parade and had a new parade. I forget exactly. Oh, is it like the? It's the one where they're like, "When will you see us again?" Oh, oh, and so they have the parade, and they didn't have the Electric Parade anymore. And I think 2 years ago, they brought back the Electric Parade for a limited amount of time, and I went and saw it, and I loved it.
Did you bring a little toy and then they
No.
get a thumbs up? Oh.
No, I was with my girlfriend at the time, and I didn't want to
So
look like
you
a
didn't
nerd.
You could have like.
I'm
did it
entirely
on your
lying.
coat.
I didn't care if I looked like a nerd. I couldn't find it. I found it like 2 days later. Yeah, it was in my garage in my like old toy box, all my other plushes. I had a lot of plushes as a kid, like a lot of stuffed animals. But yeah, Pete the Magic Dragon is wonderful. There's so many dragons. There's so many dragons.
Because dragons are dope.
They are. Oh, and once again, on dragons, we can hop over to a Mexican culture, or Inca and Mayan culture, because this isn't exactly Mexican religion yet. It's predating.
Yeah, it's before the Spanish showed up.
Yeah, it's early dating his over that side. So we can talk about the serpent god Quetzalcoatl. Probably saying it wrong, but that's the best I'm gonna get it. So Quetzalcoatl was a serpent with feathery wings and was believed as a benevolent spirit that only ever accepted sacrifices of snakes, bugs, and birds. No humans. That's a really large misconception. Is that people thought that they frequently sacrificed humans to Quetzalcoatl.
Oh, okay.
But in the time that Quetzalcoatl was mainly being worshipped, it was a very peaceful time that was very focused on farming and irrigation.
Okay.
And so he was seen as the god of like crops and rain.
Mhm.
And so in the story, towards the tail end of his existence in the stories, there's two ways of this going, right? So either he traveled east in a boat made of snakes. So
That's pretty metal.
yeah, so he got in this boat made of snakes and just traveled east and like disappeared over the sunset and was gone. And they're like, oh, like, you know, our king, our god. Or he went down to the life waters and drank from them. And from that, he kind of like pulled a phoenix and like died, but then reincarnated as Venus and ascended into the heavens, being Venus. So many believe that this is actually just kind of the religious explanation for the change that was brought upon by the northern immigration, leading to more violent revolutions and religions. So they also believe that this was kind of showing the invasion of the Yucatan and the Itza further in, and these this is when we can see a little more sacrifices to different gods.
Okay.
That's all I got on that.
So I guess I'll finish this off with the story of Sigurd. So I'm doing this off memory, but this is like my
That's-
favorite story.
Oh, that's the best way to do
Yeah,
things.
so it's gonna be a bit more colorful, probably.
We had so much time to prepare, and look at us.
Yeah, but you know, I probably remember it pretty good.
I believe in you.
We'll figure it out. So essentially, Sigurd, his parents were killed. I think they were like kings or something. I don't remember. They were killed. It doesn't matter. And so he ended up getting adopted by a dwarf, And so it turns out like Sigurd is jacked. He's super strong, and so he decides he's gonna go kill a dragon.
Wait, so he's like naturally super strong?
Yeah,
Oh, so he was like, oh, okay, I can work with
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like,
So he's super strong, and so his adopted dad is a dwarf, so of course he's a blacksmith because racism.
yeah, dwarfs can only be blacksmiths.
Yeah, so he tells his dwarf dad, be like, "Hey, make me a sword." And so he's like, "Okay." So he makes him a sword, and then he picks up the sword and he slams it against the anvil and it shatters. He goes, "Make me a better sword." So he, oh my
What
god,
a
so
bad son. Because
Yeah.
this man adopted you and raised
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, so I think he does it a couple more times till finally he hits it against the anvil, it doesn't break. So he goes to kill the dragon,
Dragon.
and so he realizes pretty quickly that
That he bit off a little more than he could chew.
well, yeah, so he checks it out, and a sword can't penetrate its armor.
Oh wow, surprising.
So yeah, so he watches it for a bit, and so he realizes that its belly is soft. So he's watching it, and he sees that he like goes out to drink some water every at a certain time. So he digs a hole and he like covers it up, right, and like right where the dragon walks out.
Uh-huh.
So he waits till the dragon's over him, and he just yeets out of the hole, cuts him open, and then he eats its heart.
Right.
And so this gives them like wisdom of like
He's imbued with the power of the dragon.
yeah. So he's able to listen. He's able to understand animals.
Oh, that's cool.
And so his dwarf dad was like around. He's like watching to make sure everything's going well. So he could overhear birds talking about how it's like, oh, that sucks. Like this dwarf's about to betray him and take his take the heart for himself. Like I wish there's some way we could tell him.
But he already ate the heart.
Well, yeah, but they did. I guess the birds didn't notice or something.
Oh, okay.
So then he's like, "Oh no, you're gonna betray me!" So he kills him.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, and then I think he does some. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
That's
The
some other
dragon part's the
heroic
important
shit.
Part. Yeah.
yeah, that's something.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you eat a dragon's heart, and you can talk to the animals.
Don't tell me that, cause I'll go to the Komodo Island.
Well,
Just eating a bunch of lizard hearts. And it's like, Adam, it's not gonna work.
You're gonna get diseases from that.
Yeah, Komodo dragons are so much bigger than I realized.
Oh yeah, they're giant.
They're like 8
monsters.
feet. They're humongous.
Like if those start coming at you, oof.
And they're fast, and they
Yeah.
have septic bites,
Uh,
and they'll track you for days.
oh really?
Yeah, so sometimes for animals they can't kill, which is far and few between.
Yeah.
Like very little animals.
Yeah, I'm sure one gets away every now and then.
Exactly. So they have septic bites though. Their mouths are so dirty. They don't have poison. For a while it was misconceived that they had poison. No, their saliva is just I think it's like lightly acidic and full of bacteria. And some scientists even use Komodo dragons, and they think, like examining it, they think that T-Rexes might have been similar to Komodo dragons.
Oh.
Because for a while they believed that T-Rexes weren't hunters, they were scavengers, but they also thought that being so big it'd kind of be hard to be a scavenger.
Yeah.
So they think that similar to Komodo dragons, which what they do is they bite. So say they bite a deer, right, and or a bison. This bison's able to escape because it's a big creature and manages to get out of its jaws and takes off. So in a couple days though, it dies of infection. The Komodo dragon is able to track it. It can smell it, the specific infection, and it can track it for miles, and it'll just follow it until it dies. And so then it dies, and they eat it. So some people think that was kind of part of the way T-Rexes would hunt, is that they would take a bite, and if it escaped, they would just follow it until it died. And then that's why they think that they have somewhat like they think that they might be like scavengers in that sense. But yeah, Komodo dragons are terrifying and humongous. That's a real life dragon. Bearded dragons are adorable, little babies, and they have little tiny soft bellies, just like real dragons. All lizards have little tiny soft bellies. But yeah, overall, I think that. Do you believe in dragons, Jesse? As we try to do most episodes, we discuss if we believe in
I
it.
mean, if we find some dragon bones, I'll believe it. But
As of right now, I think it's more grounded in myth and wondrous stories than anything. However, I do think that, of course, there's that relative, like, grounded in reality aspect, that it probably came from, like, whale bones and dinosaur bones and whatnot. These gigantic creatures that possibly existed.
But I want the dragons to exist.
Oh, I'd love for dragons to. I mean, because, like, I'd love them to exist, but, like, if you can't train a dragon and have a pet dragon, then what's the point?
Yeah, you got a point.
they'd be so beautiful though. But yeah, overall, I think that's kind of what we've got on Western Dragons. Anything else?
I think that's everything I got.
Awesome. All right. Well, this was Creepy Calling Cryptids. Thank you guys for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Maybe if the dragons don't get us.